Happy Monday. Welcome back to Inside the Lines. A lot of value across a few sports this week for you guys. We'll get some Act Now plays for you. And although MLB season is over, now we have college basketball to look into. So we're going to start with that. Jake, the college sports king, is here. And we're going to start off with some early college basketball season plays. This is the best value you get of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to find value because you don't have any data on this year's teams, so it's kind of hard. But like scouring, there's over 100 games today, pretty much. So you're going to find some good value if you know the teams, if you watch these small schools. So I've done research for y'all, and I got some good value today.
I was going to say, speaking of small schools, we'll start with a parlay. You have Moneyline parlay, Belmont and Charlotte parlay here.
Yeah, Belmont's a really good basketball program. Casey Alexander is their coach. He's a great coach. They're much better at home than they are on the road, and they're playing today at home. They lost Ben Shepherd to the NBA. The Pacers drafted him, but they still got a pretty talented team overall. They're playing a Georgia State team that lost its best player to GCU, to the transfer portal, and they get this game at home. So I think where you get the value in the model and earlier in the season is these games where the spread's like -7 to -10, and we have them at around -15, and you parlay them. So these are two games where I like to parlay them. And Charlotte, they're I think -8-point favorites, and we have them winning by 15 or something like that. So they're another value play. Charlotte should be pretty good this year. They have a bunch of transfers on that team that are pretty good.
Okay. Let's move to another Moneyline parlay. Same logic here. We have a decently sized spread, but a lot more value when you just parlay the two money lines.
Exactly. I really like this Charleston team. They were like 30-0 at one point last year, and I think they're going to be even better this year. So I was all over Charleston -5 when the line opened against Iona, but the line's at -7.5. I still think there's value there. And I think this Charleston team's really good. And Iona, they're historically good. But they don't have Richard Pitino anymore. And they only return one starter. I think Charleston should win this game by double digits. And Delaware also lost their best player to TCU, but they still have a really good team overall. Plenty of Power 5 transfers, top transfers.
That's a lot more about these schools than I know. Let's move on to one more pick you have for tonight. Houston team total over 82.5.
Yeah, I like this Houston offense. They got a couple of transfers coming in that could really shoot the ball. LJ Cryer from Baylor and Damian Dunn from Temple. They're just going to be a really high-paced offense. And Louisiana Monroe's defense isn't that great. The two Power 5 teams that they played early in the season last year, I think they gave up 92 and 97 against. So I like this play.
Yeah, some questions in the chat. A couple of teams people are looking at a spread here with SIU Edwardsville. Worth a look here. Let's see if we have any model value on this. Can bring Steven in here.
Yeah, no, I looked into that one already, and we actually have a lean the other way at Dayton. One of the comments was that SIU Edwardsville was a good cover machine team, but they were good at home, according to our records, at 8-5, but not on the road. We go the other way on that.
Yeah, I see another question about Oregon, which you also answered as an Act Now. The spread line up to 6. One more question here while we have the model up on college basketball. Providence, 18.5-point favorites. Do we think that's too much with a new head coach?
It seems tied, but I mean, Providence, they have a 5-star in Garwi Duel coming in. They returned their top 2 players from last year, and Kim English.
We do have a ton of model value. We would set the line at 25.5.
Yeah, I mean, Kim English brought his top players in from George Mason last year. So I would,
but as Jake's probably said, just like college football with the transfer portal and all the movement, when Jake was talking about a stability model in college football, there's not a lot of stability when there's new coach and like 3 new starters, whatever. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Then the Rhode Island question. We had Rhode Island. We had good value on them when it was Rhode Island -8, and then it went to -12, and we didn't have as much value. I'd still lean Rhode Island. I think that's another team that I'd put in a parlay.
Yeah, we have the line at -16 almost.
Exactly.
Okay. Good to know. Keep asking your college basketball questions in the chat. Jake will get to them. While I have you, Steven, let's move over to some of our NBA model value picks for tonight. Just 2 games worth noting, but if you look over at Denver, definitely an act now because this line's growing.
Yeah, before I don't want to go off script, but one thing about college basketball I'll talk about tomorrow, remind me, is I have a big theory about when to make bets, which is November and December before teams start giving up, and the nefarious elements of gambling start infiltrating January and February basketball, especially in the Northeast, where there's certain elements around and there's point guards on favorite teams by teams favored -7 to -10, where it's so easy not to cover but still win. Anyway, go on. That's an important thing in college basketball. NBA tonight.
Well, we're gonna thrive when we have when we're just NBA college basketball season coming up here soon.
Yeah, the Clippers at Knicks, James Harden's debut. Look, I think for people who have tuned in know that our feeling on James Harden isn't the most positive, and that his numbers in Philadelphia were the Philadelphia covered at over 70% rate without Harden. So I think the line here is Clippers plus 2.5. It may have come down slightly to 1.5. I just think that, I'm fading Harden, which could be dangerous. Let's face it. He often makes a splash to prove his talent. Even when he was trying to force his way out of Houston, he averaged on 40 points for a week before he, gave up on the team. So there is that wild card, but I'm going to believe in the Knicks, who have not done well to start the season straight up, but they are good covering so far. And it turns out that 5-point loss to Boston, the debut, is actually an impressive game when you look at how good Boston's been doing since then.
Exactly.
Also, some value here in Denver. I see the line going to -5.5 some places. So both teams are without key guards. CJ McCollum out for the Pelicans, and Jamal Murray out for Denver. And McCollum doesn't miss a lot of time, but in the 7 games without him, the Pelicans had a negative 1.7 point differential. With him, it's plus 1.9. So he had a real big impact on the line, on the margin of victory. Denver is barely 0.1 point differential in the 18 games Murray didn't play, and they were nearly +6 with him. So he obviously makes a big difference too, but in some senses they might offset here. The reason why we like the model is leaning Denver is they have the size, and Aaron Gordon is probably the best possible player to put on Zion in terms of having a superior athlete who's bigger than Zion and is fairly big for an NBA player. They also have obviously big front court players at Denver already. So Zion shouldn't be able to run wild. And in the model, Denver's an excellent defensive 3-point percentage team at home. New Orleans, without McCollum and Trey Murphy, who's been out all year, have no one projected to shoot even above 30% from 3. So that's where we have the Pelicans coming under their team total, which is where the value is coming in.
Okay, so there's not much. Are there any player props to look at with McCollum and Murphy out, or do you think this team's just not going to produce points?
This you can want to bring up my screen. When I checked this earlier today, there were a lot of the odds weren't out, but it looks like I clicked on Boston for some reason. A lot of the lines weren't out yet, but let's see. So Zion doesn't look like it. Brandon Ingram, we got some value on his under points, rebounds, and assists. I guess he missed some time, and then his last game he did not have a big day at home against Atlanta with just 26. And again, the defense so since we're predicting the value here based on the Pelicans coming under 108, you can expect a lot of the points, rebounds, and assist numbers for Pelicans players to be under. So take that with a grain of salt. If you really disagree with that assessment, then that could be different. We do like Valanciunas over in points, rebounds, and assists. I don't know what the juice is, so I'm not going to recommend that as a top play. He'll have to play major minutes, you would think. Although I'm sure Jokic will whip him. And Jokic goes out to the perimeter and can really negate any size that Valanciunas has.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, good to know there. We'll look at some unders on the Pelicans side. Let's move over to some college football. We're really hopping all over today. Lots to go over. So a few games, some marquee matchups really to go over for this week. A lot of discrepancy with our model. You're looking at the line first, the odds makers line, and then our model projection to the right. So Jake, first matchup, Miami at FSU. We have them winning by 23 points.
Yeah, I think FSU won this matchup like 45-3 last year at Miami. And the model really likes FSU here, even though overall we don't really like FSU. We don't really like the ACC. They get dinged down quite a bit because they play in the ACC. But we like FSU because Miami's road stats are pretty bad. Last year they averaged 18 points on the road. This year they're averaging 26, but they're giving up 23. They're just 2-6 away from home against the spread the last 2 years, and FSU's been pretty good covering the spread at home. So if you
want to move now, sorry, it's 15.5 on 2 spots.
Yeah, it was at minus 15.5, then it moved down to 14.5, and then it's going back to 15.5 in plenty of places.
So do you think there's a chance this gets smaller than 14.5, or is this probably an act now if you like FSU?
If you like FSU, it's probably an act now, especially since Miami lost NC State last week. And this is a rivalry game, so both teams are going to be fired up, but FSU is not going to take their foot off the gas if they're up early.
I like that there. One question in the chat that I just want you to see, Jake from Big Cheesy, about for college basketball, do we favor the under or over early in the season?
Looking at just most of the lines, it looked like the Sims favor the over. But I'm very cautious about playing over and unders early. I like team totals a little better than that, just to be on the safer side. That's why I played the Houston game, because I lean over in the full game. But what's driving that is we have Houston scoring 87 points. So that's where you're getting the value. So
yeah. Usually, we don't have skew over and under. And what happens is when you get the conference play, and there are certain conferences that historically play higher scoring games. Like, I don't know if it still applies necessarily, but for most of my history, the Big 12 was a high scoring conference, whereas the Big 10 was an incredibly low scoring conference, right? So the Kevin Durant days of Texas, those games would be like 90-80. And then, Greg Oden's in Big 10 playing games like 50-45. And
it's
so that's where
football, the same thing. It's the conferences, Big 10, Big 12, they're exact opposites. I know we really like the Big East overs. That was a big thing last year.
Yeah. Okay.
Historically, Big East used to be the conference of defense, but Georgetown, Syracuse, and Patrick Ewing, and Derek Coleman, they aren't there anymore. So Alonzo Mourning's not walking through that door.
Yeah, just wanted to address that. Plenty of time to keep going over college basketball through this week, though. So we'll be happy to answer those questions.
There is one over I did play earlier in the week. It was Akron, South Dakota State over 140. I know Steven's giving me that look like, what the heck? It's moved to 141.5. I still like it. We have 146 in the Sims. So I can see that going up a little more before the tip-off. So maybe get it right now, 141.5.
I just think earlier in the week was yesterday, right? So, okay.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
All right. Let's move on. We have college game day, big game here. Ole Miss going to Georgia. So will I. I'll also be traveling to Georgia. The line is 11. We have this as a 20-point game too.
Yeah, I don't like that we have FSU and Georgia, all this value, and then we have the Gators. It's just tough, especially after I went to my first Gator home game of the year. We'll watch us lose in overtime to Arkansas, and now we have FSU and Georgia as our top picks. It's pretty rough, but this is another one. Ole Miss stats on the road is what's knocking them down, and Georgia's been so good at home. They haven't been great covering. I think they're just a little above 50-50 covering, but their peripheral numbers are really, really good, and Ole Miss aren't on the road. Ole Miss is also almost blew the game last week to Texas A&M. They won 35-31, and we like Georgia's team total because of Ole Miss's defense hasn't been consistent.
Ole Miss is averaging 15 fewer points on the road, and their margin of victory is 3.3 versus 13.2 at home.
Do you think there will be any player props to watch out for on Georgia's offense, Jake, with Brock Bowers being out?
The one guy whose benefit is Ladd McConkey. I played him over 3.5 catches last week, and that hit and really early, almost in the first half. And I think I've been playing Oscar Delp as well. His line was at 33.5. Then it went down to 29.5, which I got it at. And I think he ended up with 33 yards last week. So definitely got good value when I got it there. But I think Ladd McConkey is his go-to guy, is Carson Beck's go-to guy with Bowers out.
Right. All right, let's move to one more game here. We're going with an over, Texas at TCU. The line's 53. We have them projected for 62.
Yeah, so this is one of the games where there's backup quarterbacks. I don't know if Ewers is back yet. I don't think so. I think he might be out this week. He's more on the questionable, the doubtful side. And this one's TCU's home stats is what's driving this pick. TCU's home games tend to go over. So that's what's driving this pick. And I think there's pretty good value. I can only see this going up, really, 55, 56.
Okay, a little act now moment there. That's all we have so far this week for college football. As injuries come out through the week, we'll have more value and more steam as well. Let's move over to NFL. A few model value plays here as well. 3 to start with. We're looking at the Colts, the Patriots. We've seen this line move from New England was favored -1.5, and now the steam's all coming in on the Colts.
Yeah, we want to put these out early because this past week we've reached that point in the year where lines are even sharper than they are to start the season. So by the time tip off, like there was basically no value no differences between the model lines and the betting lines. This first one I threw up a little in my mouth saying it, but we do have value on the Patriots. If you look at the Colts, while they won easily, it was all with Bryce Young's 2 pick sixes and a 3rd interception. On offense, the Colts only had 78 yards rushing at 2.6 yards per carry and 127 yards passing at 4.9 yards per attempt. So yes, Mac Jones could definitely turn it over and has had his fair share of interceptions, including the one that cost them the potential, comeback win yesterday. But that's kind of that's not something you rely on as pick sixes as a way to win games. So we still think that the Patriots are still Patriots at home. The Colts offense isn't a 28 point per game offense or 30. They've been averaging 30 something points the last few weeks, but they haven't been playing that way.
Maybe there's some value on this Colts team total under. Have we looked into that?
I could, but you could have asked me that before the show. So
maybe we could,
Came to my head. Off the top of my head, yes.
Yeah, we are running out of time, so let's move on here. We'll go to the Browns now going to Baltimore. Look-ahead line was 4.5, and the steam is just coming in on the Ravens.
Yeah, as predicted, all the steam moves that we picked up yesterday, pretty much all went the way we thought. And so this case is up to -6 in a lot of spots. Again, the model has Baltimore at nearly 10 because we have the Ravens scoring over the 22 team total that the odds would imply. The Ravens played Cleveland in week 3, I believe, scored 28. It was one of Lamar's best games. Since then, we've had Keaton Mitchell. We've had Odell Beckham getting his first catch. And so in that game, yes, you could argue that Cleveland only scoring 3 was more about DTR, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe it's the fact that Baltimore has shut down, far superior quarterbacks, including Geno Smith and Jared Goff, and held them to, single digits. Baltimore has given up 9 touchdowns this year, something crazy like that. So I think the models and the statistics and the angles will steam more to Baltimore's one I get now. The last one, Washington, Seattle. This is the weird one we talked about yesterday where, though Seattle got decimated, the things that Baltimore did to beat Seattle, Washington can't do. Washington can't run the way that Baltimore can. Washington can't rush the passer. Washington, even though they beat the Patriots, they had 0 sacks. So they traded away Sweat and Chase Young. They didn't sack Mac. So that pressure that Baltimore got, 4 sacks, including a strip sack, 2 by Kyle Van Noy. Though again, those are things that Washington can't replicate. And then it's at Seattle. And there's good teams get humiliated one week, go back home, tend to bounce back. That's what Detroit did when they covered the following week against Vegas, I believe.
Right. This feels like a copy and paste of the Detroit situation after the Ravens. All right, let's move on to some of the lines Stephen couldn't get to last night, but some opening lines we could see predictions and steam going on. Let's start with the Texans going to Cincinnati. The spread is 8. You think this is probably going to start steaming towards Texas?
Yeah, it did. It was 8.5 before last night, and then it's actually gone down all the way to 7. I thought that would hang at 7.5 after Joe Burrow did such a good job. So C.J. Stroud, almost 500 yards, 5 touchdowns, game winner, incredibly clutch. Thought that would steam it down to 8, 7.5, but it went all the way to 7 pretty much everywhere. Even though Burrow was again had his second straight great game. I guess it's because I was surprised by this. I don't think it's going to go more than 7. If you can get, if you're on Cincinnati and you see it go to 6.5 anywhere, I would take that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a key number.
Let's move to the disappointing Bills hosting the Broncos. Bills still 8.5-point favorites, but definitely some room to shop around on this line right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. The Bills are down to like 43% to make the playoffs, and even though they're still like 6th best team in the model, and I forget what team it is in the NFC has the exact same chances, and they're like the 20th best team in our power rankings. But this is a shop around. I've seen 7.5 to 8.5. Steam is on the Broncos because they were able to seemingly fix their defensive issues and shut down Kansas City 2 out of the last 4 weeks. On a bye, so they have some momentum. Buffalo is just incredibly predictable. As weird as it sounds, they don't run the ball, and I don't think Leonard Fournette, who they signed off the scrap heap, is the key there.
I don't know why we're not hammering Dalton Kincaid every week. It's just
yeah. Well, he did lose that fumble that may have lost the game.
He's still getting the ball. All right, let's move to one more game. We still have to see how the Jets perform tonight. But what are our predictions on that, and where do you think this line starts to move?
Well, the one prediction that I hope hits, because I really need it, is the Breece Hall over 16.5 receiving yards we talked about last week. That line is up to 19.5, 20.5, so hopefully you tuned in and got 3 yards of value over the weekend. Anyway, I think the Jets, if they play an ugly game, win or lose, but they actually can hold the Chargers to under 24, then I think this line will hold. But if the Chargers put up points and if the offense doesn't put up more than say 14, 15 points, then I could see this steaming towards the Raiders with all the good vibes they got with Antonio Pierce. People will remember what happened 2 years ago when they got rid of Gruden and Bisaccia, who was a coach that the team loved. Just effort alone got them into the playoffs. I mean, they hammered the Giants long before Daniel Jones tore his ACL. So, I think this team will go to the Raiders if the Jets don't put up points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good to know there. I feel like everyone's going to start to be high on this team. Jake, I'll ask you too, just really quick. Is it false hope to be loving this Vegas team right now and seeing the steam come in on them?
I don't know. I liked O'Connell in college. I thought he was one of the sleepers in the draft. So I like the Raiders, but the Jets defense against a rookie quarterback, it could be scary. I do think this team is going to be on the Raiders.
So I'll be curious to see what Hunter Renfro's prop line will be this week, because for some reason their offense and Josh McDaniels is the one quarterback or one head coach, him and Jimmy G, and one head coach quarterback combination that wouldn't like both Hunter Renfro and Devontae Adams. I can see not having chemistry with them, but not having chemistry with both is amazing to me. So
if you ever listen to Brandon Marshall on any of the podcasts he goes on, the one coach he could not stand was Josh McDaniels. So that's also very interesting. So I think the players might be very happy as well.
Renfro only had 32 yards, but still, I just feel like he maybe
that's like 200 times his season average.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, good stuff there. I guess we'll have to see how this plays out tonight. That's all we have time for today. Tomorrow, no NBA games, so a lot more time for college basketball maybe, but mostly some injury reports for football and some line movement and lots of time for questions. So bring your questions tomorrow. Good luck with your bets tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow.